This isn't my hand.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we are looking at Raiders of the Lost Shark. This is a 2014 film, runs about 71 minutes. IMDb does say this was from 2015, but the DVD box says 2014, so go with what you prefer. This was directed by Brett Kelly, written by David Lloyd and Brett Kelly. Stars Candice Lidstone, Jessica Huether, Catherine Mary Clark, Lawrence Evenchick, Pavel Labansky, Kendra Summerfield, Richard Groen, Scott McClelland, and many others. Looks like Candice Lidstone is probably the most recognizable member of the cast, with mostly minor roles to her credit, but a decent amount of credits. Shockingly, this movie cost $350,000 according to IMDb, and I don't know where that money went. But this movie starts off with two security guards, Tyler and Gary. They're bored, and Gary brought two girls out to the site. They're apparently guarding an abandoned lake, and of course, that leads to drinking and fooling around because they have this secluded lake, some ladies, and of course you need to have booze and tomfoolery. So that's when the shark shows up. Well, everything goes kind of sideways from that point on. Then we cut to a classroom with 6 students that are learning about sharks. Some of them appear to have strong Canadian accents, and that made me suspicious right away that this may be a Canadian shark movie, and sure enough, it was. Now here we meet Professor Reynolds, played by Candice Lidstone, and Carly Reynolds is not just a professor, she's also the survivor of an incident on Murphy's Island that they allude to but don't really talk about till much later, and there is an inconsistency with that story as well, at least there seems to be. Well, the students decide to take a trip out to check out the legend of this incident, and then we have 2 new security guards, like the shift change or whatever, trying to figure out where the other guys went. That's when Professor Carly Reynolds is pulled aside and talked to about an incident. Allegedly, and this is the story the company lady purveys, is that they were doing some underwater drilling, discovered a cave, and may have accidentally unleashed a shark from the prehistoric era. But that story kind of is contradicted later on. Then we've got 3 of the students going out to a forbidden island. There are some great lines in this movie like, "This isn't my hand," and "There's no goat," stuff like that. We also have some random victims of the shark, like a French Canadian or boyfriend, and he doesn't seem too concerned about the whole situation. And that's where we get our one appearance of plot. Then we find out it's not actually an island, it's a peninsula, and I don't know why they changed that detail, but they did for some reason. The sheriff in this movie is pretty funny. He is not concerned at all, and he's not actually a sheriff because they're in Canada. He's a chief, but he insists on being called sheriff, which I thought was fun. There's a couple other silly jokes between the 2 cops, and they're pretty ineffective. The reporter's name is pretty funny as well, and that's around the time we find out that the shark is not confined to the lake, probably because it's actually a peninsula, but they talk about the shark getting out and getting into the general population, so it's no longer contained, and of course they've got to get to the bottom of what's going on. Carly flashes back to what happened with the incident that she was supposed to be involved in, and although they alluded that she's the only survivor of the incident, it turns out there were only 2 people involved in the incident, so it was her and her sister, and they made it sound like, without much greater explanation, that there was some sort of like group of people that were attacked. So I don't know if that was like supposed to be like the urban legend got blown out of proportion or what, but they didn't really elaborate very well on it, and the flashback scene was kind of lame. And again, everybody gets killed in the shallows, it seems, because they're all like knee high in water when they die. Then we meet Howell and we learn it's his island and what's really going on with the shark. I don't want to give too much away because there are a few twists in the film, but what we're looking at is about 13 kills, so the body count's fairly high, only 1 plot, and it bears a striking similarity to Sharkenstein. Now Sharkenstein came out about a year and a half later, but they have some pretty similar themes here, and I I didn't really have a problem with that. I thought both movies had their strengths and weaknesses. This one definitely has a better budget and better special effects, but it also has some more well-trained actors in it. There's still B-movie actors, but some of them were a little better trained, and there were some tighter plot elements, but there was also a lot more jokes. There's a great line where they're like, we're stuck on this island, which is actually a peninsula, by the way, and she says, the only boat was destroyed, and one of the guys says, no, I got one over there. And it's just comedically well done, and they're playing it totally straight. So it takes itself seriously within the universe, which I really like, because I don't like it when the characters are in on the joke. I think that's lame. But it's fun, it's fast-paced, I didn't get bored, and despite the similarities to Sharkenstein, I am going to recommend this. It was a lot of fun to see, and it had some really witty dialogue. There were a few elements, especially with the background of this other incident, that were really dumb, and it looks like there's inconsistencies because they don't really explain. Like, they said they were drilling and unleashed a shark, and later you get a totally different story from Howl. So it would have been nice if there was a little bit more explanation there, but overall it had a lot of fun elements and some weird twists, and it was just a tighter version of Sharkenstein with definitely a better budget. So if you get a chance to check this out, I'm going to recommend it. As far as shark movies go, it was one of the better ones, and it definitely was funny and entertaining at the same time. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.